You've been lied to about silence. You've been told it's a punishment, a manipulation, a childish game called a silent treatment. That's the surface level lie that keeps you trapped. Here's the truth that's going to hurt. Silence isn't about her. It's never been about her. Your withdrawal, when done correctly, is a radical act of self-containment. It's a test you didn't know you were administering. And her reaction, the anger, the sudden warmth, the manufactured crisis isn't about you. It's a precise diagnostic tool revealing the depth of her own self-regulation deficit. This is the transition from seeing silence as a tactic to wielding it as a diagnostic. This is about learning to read the nervous system's truth. But before we can understand the power of contained silence, we have to expose the weakness of the silence you've probably been practicing. This is the needy man's withdrawal. It's the most common failure because it disguises emotional neediness as strategic strength. You decide you're not going to text first. You're going to give her space. But what's happening inside you? Your nervous system is frantic. You're tracking the hours, then the days. Every notification from your phone sends a jolt of anticipation through your body. Is it her? Did she finally break? This silence isn't calm. It's a scream for attention disguised as quiet. You are externally silent, but internally you are begging for a reaction. You are waiting for her to validate your existence by noticing your absence. This is the fundamental paradox. The needy man uses withdrawal to try to get something. He wants to elicit a specific outcome, an apology, a chase, proof that she cares. His focus is entirely external. His entire emotional state is contingent on her response. And because of this, his silence is incredibly easy to detect. It has a frequency of desperation. It's not a solid wall. It's a tense, anxious waiting room. He's not contained within himself. He's just holding his breath, hoping she'll open the door. Why does this form of withdrawal always fail? Because it's not withdrawal at all. It's a different kind of pursuit. You are still chasing her approval, her reaction, her validation. You've just switched the method from chasing with attention to chasing with absence. The goal is the same, to control her behavior to soothe your own anxiety. And a woman's nervous system, especially one with an anxious attachment pattern, is exquisitely tuned to detect this. She can feel the tension in your silence. She can sense that you are waiting, and this knowing allows her to control the dynamic because she holds the key to your relief. The internal chaos is unmistakable. You're playing a movie in your head about what she's thinking. You're rehearsing conversations. You're checking her social media for clues. This is the opposite of self-containment. This is your psychological state being held hostage by someone else's actions. The silence becomes a torture because you have no internal resources to soothe the discomfort of the unknown. You need the external world to resolve your internal conflict. This failure mode exists because most men are never taught that true strength comes from the ability to be with oneself, to sit in the void of uncertainty without frantically trying to fill it. The needy man's withdrawal is an attempt to fill the void by manipulating an external object. It's a confession of inner poverty. And it always leads to the same outcome. You break first. You break because the internal pressure becomes unbearable. You send the "Hey, are we okay?" text. You like her photo. You find an excuse to re-engage. And in that moment, you fail the test you didn't even know you were taking. You reveal that your silence was a tactic, not a state of being. You show her that your center of gravity is still located outside of yourself, in her hands. And once that is known, the power dynamic is set. You are the reactor. She holds the stimulus. Now let's map the neurological shift from that frantic, needy silence to a state of genuine self-containment. This isn't about learning a new tactic. It's about undergoing a complete rewiring of your nervous system's default setting. The self-contained silence doesn't come from a place of lack. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't track days or wait for validation. Its power comes from a place of radical self-focus. You withdraw not to get a reaction from her, but to return a reaction to yourself. You are recentering your own psychological gravity. The external world becomes secondary. Your internal state becomes the primary object of your attention. This silence feels different because it is different. It's calm. It's solid. It's a decision, not a reaction. How do you know the difference internally? The frantic silence is filled with mental noise, the rehearsals, the constant checking. The contained silence is characterized by a quiet mind. The urge to check your phone doesn't come from a jolt of anxiety, but from a habit you consciously choose not to feed. You feel the urge, you acknowledge it as a ghost of your old programming, and you let it pass. You are practicing the art of sitting with discomfort without acting to resolve it. The internal cue of genuine containment is a sense of fullness, not emptiness. You are not empty without her attention. You are complete within yourself, and your silence is simply the external reflection of that internal completeness. This is what it feels like in the nervous system. Your breath is deep and diaphragmatic, not shallow and thoracic. Your shoulders are relaxed, not tensed around your ears. There is no adrenaline spike at a notification. There is no cortisol-fueled loop of catastrophic thinking. Your physiological state is one of rest and digest, not fight or flight. The silence is not a weapon you are pointing at her. It is a boundary you are drawing around yourself. It is the space you create to remember who you are outside of the dynamic. It is the practice of individuation, the psychological separation necessary for any two whole individuals to truly connect. This shift is the entire game. When your silence comes from this place of completeness, it becomes a perfect diagnostic tool. It becomes a neutral event. You are not trying to provoke a specific outcome. You are simply being in your own space. And because your energy is not leaking out in desperate anticipation, her nervous system has nothing to push against except its own internal state. Your solid, calm silence becomes a mirror, and what she sees in that mirror, reflected back at her, is her own capacity or terrifying lack thereof to self. Your containment forces her to confront her own void, and her reaction to that confrontation. That's the data you are about to learn to read. So you've established a contained silence. You are solid. You are calm. Your center of gravity is internal. And now you wait. But you're not waiting for something. You are observing. And what you will observe is the fundamental mechanism of projection. This is where her internal chaos gets attributed to you. It's a psychological transfer of discomfort so automatic, she's not even conscious she's doing it. Her abandonment fear, which your constant presence used to soothe, is now active. It's a low-grade panic in her nervous system. But the mind has a primary defense against taking responsibility for its own discomfort. It projects the cause outward. She doesn't think, I am feeling intense anxiety because I lack the internal resources to self-soothe. That's a terrifying, isolating realization. Instead, her psyche performs a simple, brutal calculation. I felt fine before he withdrew. Now I feel awful. Therefore, he is making me feel awful. His silence is the cause of my pain. Your calm presence has become the villain in the story her panic is writing. This is the psychological transfer. Her internal state of dysregulation, the anxiety, the insecurity, the voids experienced as an external attack. You are not just being silent. You are, in her perception, giving her the silent treatment. You are playing games. You are being manipulative. Blame becomes her regulation strategy. By making you the cause, she creates a script for resolution. If you would just stop being silent, her pain would end. It's a desperate attempt to externalize the solution to an internal problem. The accusation you're playing games is perhaps the most telling projection of all. It reveals that she operates from a tactical framework. She assumes you are manipulating her because that is the language her own psyche speaks. She cannot conceive of a silence that isn't a move in a game. Because for her, relationship dynamics are a series of moves and countermoves to secure attachment. Your genuine self-containment is incomprehensible to a mind that doesn't possess it. This is the setup. Your silent, contained presence has held up a mirror, and the first thing you will see in that mirror is often anger. This is not a test you designed. It is a test her psyche administers. You must learn to recognize manufactured outrage for what it is. The anger will feel personal. It will be direct. Why are you ignoring me? I can't believe you're being so cold. This is so immature. The language is specific. It's accusatory. It's morally judgmental. It frames your silence as a character flaw or a moral failing. But here is the truth you must hold on to. This anger is not about your behavior. It is a mask for her attachment panic. It is a high-volume, high-intensity signal designed to provoke a predictable response from you. It's a fire alarm she pulls to force the firefighters to arrive. Why does she use anger? Because anger is a powerful, activating emotion. It's designed to cut through ambiguity and force a confrontation. In her state of dysregulation, she needs certainty. The uncertainty of your silence is unbearable. Anger creates a clear, familiar script. There is a problem, your silence. There is a villain, you. And there is a demanded solution, you stop being silent and apologize. This script gives her nervous system a temporary sense of control. The panic of abandonment is transformed into the righteous energy of indignation. It feels better to be angry than to be afraid. The neurological underpinnings of this blame are rooted in the threat response. Her brain perceives your withdrawal as a threat to her attachment security, a primary survival need. The amygdala fires, triggering a fight or flight response. The anger is the fight response. She is fighting to re-establish the connection that her nervous system depends on for stability. The moral judgment, this is wrong. You're a bad person for doing this, is a cognitive overlay her brain applies to justify the raw biological panic. It's easier to believe you are a villain than to face the terrifying reality that her emotional stability is so fragile that a few days of silence can shatter it. This is the anger test. The test is not about whether you can withstand her anger. Any man with a spine can do that. The test is whether you can see through the anger to the panic beneath it. Can you observe the outburst without taking the bait? Can you see the accusation of playing games as a confession of her own tactical worldview? Your past condition is to remain solid, to not engage in the script she is demanding, to not apologize for your own self-containment, to not explain or defend. Any explanation is a form of re-engagement. It tells her nervous system that her anger worked, it got a reaction. You must hold the silence. You must let the anger crash against your containment, like a wave against a cliff. It is loud, it is dramatic, but it cannot move you. And when it recedes, it leaves behind pure, uncut data about her inability to sit with her own discomfort. So the anger has come. It's loud, it's personal, it's designed to provoke. Now, you must become a psychologist reading the data. This outburst is not noise, it's a signal. And what it signals is a critical failure in her self-regulation capacity. Genuine anger has a cause that exists outside of the relationship dynamic. It's a response to a specific, tangible wrong. The anger you're seeing is different. It's a panic response masquerading as moral outrage. The key to distinguishing projection from actual concern is timing and focus. Is she angry about something you did a week ago, or is she angry about your current state of silence? Is the anger focused on a specific action, or is it a vague, personal attack on your character for being cold or distant? Projected anger is never about the past. It's always about the present moment of withdrawal. It's anger that your self-containment is forcing her to feel something she has spent her life avoiding. The silent data points are everything. The speed of the escalation. The shift from 0 to 100 in a single text. The use of absolute language, you always, you never. The introduction of moral judgment where none existed before. These are not the markers of a considered response. They are the tremors of an internal earthquake. They indicate that your silence has triggered a core attachment wound, and her entire psychological structure is shaking. This is the easiest test to pass because the data is so loud and obvious. You don't need to be a detective. You simply need to hold one question in your mind. Is this anger about my behavior, or is it about her reaction to my behavior? The answer is always the latter. Her outrage is a direct measure of how intolerable. Her own internal state is without your constant regulation. The louder the anger, the greater her self-regulation deficit. Your silence hasn't created a problem, it has revealed one. And by not engaging, by not feeding the fire with the oxygen of your reaction, you allow that revelation to stand. You force her nervous system to confront its own reflection. There is no greater act of honesty, and no greater test of your own containment, than to sit quietly while someone screams at a mirror you are holding. But the anger is just the first, most obvious test. It's the blunt instrument. The more sophisticated, and far more seductive, test is what comes next. The reward. This is where the real psychological programming lives. This is the cycle of intermittent reinforcement. You hold the line through the anger. You don't engage. You remain contained. And then something shifts. The storm passes. The texts stop. There's a pause, and then, out of the blue, it arrives. Not anger, not a crisis. Warmth. A message that is suddenly open, receptive, even affectionate. Hey, I was just thinking about you. I saw this, and it reminded me of that time It's a sudden, seemingly genuine offer of connection. It feels like a breakthrough. It feels like the validation you were secretly hoping for all along. This is the hook. This is the reward. Why does this happen? Because anger is a high-risk strategy. It can push you away permanently, but warmth, affection, connection, these are the currencies you were originally chasing. Her psyche, on an unconscious level, understands the most powerful motivator known to behavioral psychology, intermittent reinforcement. It's the same principle that makes a slot machine so addictive. The player doesn't get a reward every time they pull the lever. They get it randomly, unpredictably. And that unpredictability is what makes the reward so potent. The brain becomes obsessed with the possibility of the next win. It will endure countless losses for that one hit. She is the slot machine, and your attention is the lever. Your contained silence was a series of pulls that resulted in no reward, just the anger, which was a form of loss. But now, she's paying out. She's giving you the jackpot of her warmth. And your brain, wired for this exact pattern, lights up. Dopamine. This feels like connection. This feels like success. You think, finally, she gets it. My silence worked. But here is the brutal truth. This is not genuine connection. This is strategic intimacy. It is a calculated deployment of affection designed for one purpose: to re-engage you. It's a reset button. The timing is everything. It doesn't come from a place of organic reflection. It comes precisely after her anger failed to provoke you. It is the next tool in the kit. The warmth is a test. It is testing whether your self-containment is strong enough to resist not just her negative emotions, but her positive ones as well. Can you resist the reward? Most men cannot. This is the most seductive trap because it feels so good. It feels like the goal. You've been starving for this validation, and now it's being offered. The urge to engage is overwhelming. To text back immediately. To fall back into deep, intimate conversation. To believe that the dynamic has finally been fixed. But engaging now is the ultimate failure. It tells her nervous system that your silence had a price, and that price is her intermittent affection. It proves that you are still playing the same game. You just changed your tactic from chasing to withdrawing. The goal is still the same. To get the reward, you are still externally focused. The neurological hook is profound. This sudden warmth creates a powerful association in your brain. Withdrawal followed by reward. Your mind begins to wire itself to expect that after the discomfort of silence comes the pleasure of connection. This is the cycle that creates addiction to dysfunctional dynamics. It's why people stay in relationships that are fundamentally unstable. The lows make the highs feel higher. The uncertainty makes the reward feel more valuable. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking its power over you. The reward is not a sign that you've won. It's a sign that you are being played at a much deeper, more sophisticated level. So how do you identify this manufactured connection? The timing is the first clue. It arrives after a period of tension, often immediately following an angry outburst that failed to get a reaction. It's not organic, it's strategic. The quality is different, too. It's often overly familiar or intimate, skipping over the natural rebuilding of rapport. It might reference a shared, positive memory out of context, attempting to bypass the current tension and snap back to a previous state of connection. It feels like a shortcut. This reward is testing your self-containment in the most seductive way possible. It's asking, is your internal state so solid that you don't need her validation to feel complete? Can you receive warmth without interpreting it as a green light to abandon your center and rush back into the old dynamic? The needy man sees the reward as an invitation. The contained man sees it as data. He observes it, acknowledges it, but does not let it alter his course. He understands that this sudden warmth is not about him. It's about her need to restabilize a system that your silence has unbalanced. This is the most dangerous trap because it feels like success. It appeals to the very part of you that craves the connection you've been missing. Your brain will scream that this is the moment you've been waiting for. This is why this test separates beginners from masters. The beginner falls for the reward. The master understands it as the most sophisticated form of manipulation. It's the hook that has ended more journeys of self-containment than any angry text ever could. The danger is in mistaking a strategic move for sincere affection. You must see the calculation behind the kindness. The neurological hook is the dopamine hit of intermittent validation. Your brain chemistry is literally being manipulated. When you receive that warm message after a period of silence and tension, the relief and pleasure are intense. This reinforces the behavior pattern: withdraw, receive, reward. But this is a prisoner's bargain. You are trading your long-term autonomy for short-term chemical validation. Passing this test requires you to sit with the discomfort of not taking the bait, to feel the urge to engage, and consciously choose not to. To understand that true connection cannot be manufactured. It must be built on a foundation of two whole individuals, not one person regulating the other through cycles of punishment and reward. Your silence must remain a state of being, not a negotiation tactic. So the warmth has arrived. The reward has been deployed. You felt the pull, the seductive lure of that dopamine hit. Now you must become a cold analyst of this affection. What does her sudden warmth actually reveal? It's not a sign of success. It's a data point in her psychological assessment of you. Her warmth reveals her assessment of the situation. She tried anger, and it failed to move you. Your containment held. So she has escalated to a more sophisticated strategy. The calculation behind this strategic affection is precise. If negative pressure doesn't work, perhaps positive pressure will. The reward indicates that she perceives a loss of control. The silent, contained man is an unpredictable variable. He cannot be controlled by drama, so perhaps he can be controlled by desire. The warmth is an attempt to re-establish a predictable lever, the lever of your need for her validation. This test is what separates the beginner from the master. The beginner sees the warmth as a victory lap. He thinks, my silence worked. She's coming back. The master sees it as the most dangerous phase of the examination. He understands that falling for the reward proves his self-containment was a temporary act, a strategy to win her back, not a genuine state of being. Her warmth is testing the depth of your internal change. Are you a man who has truly found his center? Or are you just a smarter version of the needy man, playing a longer game to ultimately get the same reward? The danger here is profound. Mistaking the strategic intimacy for sincerity is the relapse point. It's the moment you abandon your own development for the comfort of the old dynamic. You confuse the reward for the goal. But the goal was never to get her back. The goal was to become a man who doesn't need her or anyone to regulate his own emotional state. If you take the bait, you demonstrate that you are still the same person, just with a new trick. You show her that your center is still external, and she can still access it with the right combination of stimuli. The relationship may temporarily feel better, but the foundational imbalance remains. You have simply agreed to a more subtle form of servitude, when both anger and reward fail to break your containment. Her psyche will resort to its most powerful and desperate tool, the manufactured crisis. This is the psychology of creating an emergency where none exists. It's the ultimate test of your protective instincts and your ability to distinguish authentic need from a regulation strategy. Chaos becomes a relational tool for one simple reason: it forces re-engagement. A crisis creates an immediate, morally unambiguous demand for your attention. It bypasses the subtlety of emotional games and appeals directly to the male instinct to protect, to rescue, to solve problems. She might have a sudden, severe issue at work, a dramatic fallout with a close friend or family member, An emotional breakdown over a seemingly minor issue that spirals into an existential emergency. The timing is always suspected, occurs during a period of your sustained, calm silence. This activates the rescuer dynamic, a powerful psychological archetype. The rescuer gets his sense of value and purpose from saving someone. It's a seductive role because it feels noble. It feels like strength. But in this context, it's a trap. You are being invited back into the dynamic, not as an equal partner, but as a service provider for her emotional stability. The crisis is manufactured to force you to drop your boundaries and your self-focus to attend to her chaos. It's a way of saying, my internal world is so unmanageable that I must create an external fire to force you to put it out. Recognizing the strategic emergency is critical. An authentic crisis has a life of its own. It doesn't conveniently appear when relational tension is high. A manufactured crisis will often have a vague, emotional quality rather than a concrete, practical one. The problem is frequently something you cannot actually solve, but are expected to emotionally manage. The language is about her inability to cope. I can't handle this. I don't know what to do. I need you right now. This is the key distinction. She doesn't need your problem-solving skills. She needs your presence as an emotional regulator. The crisis is the bait for the rescuer, and the rescuer's payoff is the feeling of being needed. It's a perfect, dysfunctional loop. This is the most sophisticated manipulation because it attacks your identity. It doesn't test your resistance to negativity or your resistance to pleasure. It tests your resistance to your own sense of purpose. The crisis test asks, can you prioritize your own containment over the compelling illusion of being a hero? Identifying the strategic emergency requires you to ignore the content of the crisis and focus solely on the context. The timing is everything. Does this emergency directly follow a period where your silent containment has held firm against both anger and reward? If so, it is almost certainly a test. The crisis is designed to trigger your protective instincts, to appeal to your masculinity in a way that feels primal and righteous. It's much harder to ignore a cry for help than an angry text. This tests your protective instincts by twisting them. A healthy protective instinct is directed outward from a place of internal strength. This crisis demands that you abandon your strength to tend to her weakness. It tests whether your self-containment is strong enough to withstand the guilt and obligation that a manufactured crisis induces. Will you feel responsible for her emotional state? Will you feel like a bad person for not rushing to the rescue? Passing this test means understanding the difference between support and enabling. Supporting a partner is helping them carry a burden they are already carrying themselves. Enabling is carrying the burden for them because they refuse to develop the strength to carry it alone. The manufactured crisis is a request for enabling, not support. Your silence forced her to confront her own inability to self-soothe. And instead of building that capacity, she has created a drama that demands you do it for her. The danger here is the most profound because it feels like the right thing to do. Your entire conditioning tells you to help someone in need. But this is not help. It is a rescue mission for her dysregulation. By answering the call, you are not saving her. You are preventing her from ever learning to save herself. You are confirming that chaos is an effective strategy for securing your attention. You are teaching her that the way to get you back is to fall apart. This is the foundation of a codependent dynamic, where one person's stability is contingent on the other's instability. Your containment, if you hold it, is the only thing that can break this cycle. It is the refusal to be the hero in a story that requires a victim. So the anger failed, the reward failed, and now the crisis arrives. This is the final, most sophisticated examination of your self-containment. It's a test that targets the core of the masculine identity, the protector, the problem solver, the rescuer. The manufactured emergency is designed to make you feel obligated, to make your silence feel like a moral failure in the face of someone's supposed distress. Identifying the strategic emergency requires a forensic eye. You must learn to ignore the compelling content of the drama and focus coldly on the context. The nature of the crisis is a distraction, a sudden problem at work, a dramatic fallout with a friend, an emotional spiral that supposedly requires your immediate, stabilizing presence. The details don't matter. What matters is the timing. Does this emergency appear only after a sustained period of your unshakable silence? Does it conveniently arise at the moment your containment has proven immune to both negative and positive pressure? If so, you are not looking at a random event. You are looking at a strategic deployment of chaos. This tests your protective instincts by perverting them. A healthy protective instinct flows from a place of internal abundance. You see a genuine need and you choose to respond from your strength. The manufactured crisis inverts this. It demands that you abandon your strength to cater to a manufactured weakness. It tries to induce guilt. It whispers that a real man wouldn't stand by while his partner suffers. It makes your self-containment look like callousness. The test is whether you can see the puppeteer's strings. Can you recognize that the suffering is a performance designed to pull you back onto the stage of her dysregulation? The difference between support and enabling becomes the critical line. Support is what you offer an equal someone who is fundamentally capable but going through a tough time. Enabling is what you do for someone who refuses to develop their own capacity. The manufactured crisis is a plea for enabling. It's a declaration. I cannot handle my own emotions, so I have created a situation that forces you to handle them for me. By answering this call, you are not being strong. You are participating in a dynamic that ensures she never has to be. You are confirming that falling apart is a reliable strategy for securing your attention. You are teaching her that chaos works. The danger here is the most profound because it feels like the right thing to do. Your entire social and biological conditioning screams at you to help. But this is not help. It is a rescue mission for her inability to Passing this test requires a radical redefinition of strength. Strength is not rushing into every fire you see. Strength is having the discernment to know which fires are real and which are arson attacks on your peace. It is the strength to tolerate the guilt of not playing the hero in a story that requires a victim. Your containment, if you hold it, is the ultimate refusal to enable dysfunction. It is the silent statement that you will no longer be the solution to a problem you did not create. So the crisis has been deployed. You've felt the pull, the primal urge to fix, to rescue, to stabilize. Now, you must interpret the data. What does this manufactured emergency truly reveal about her? It's not a sign of her helplessness. It's a measure of her autonomy, or rather, the stark lack of it. Her emergencies reveal the depth of her self-regulation deficit. The anger showed she couldn't tolerate her own negative emotions. The reward showed she believed connection could be used as a tool. But the crisis shows she cannot navigate the world without an external, emotional anchor. This is the most fundamental dependency. It indicates that her sense of self is so fragile that any internal discomfort must be immediately projected outward into a drama that demands a solution. The phrase "I need you right now" is the ultimate confession. It doesn't mean she needs your practical help. It means she needs your nervous system to regulate her own. How she responds to your continued silence during her crisis indicates her dependency level. Does the crisis escalate? Does it shift to a new, more dramatic emergency? Or does it, eventually, fizzle out when it fails to get the intended reaction? This pattern reveals the relationship's foundation. A relationship built on two self-contained individuals can withstand silence. A relationship built on one person regulating the other cannot. The crisis is the stress test that shows the cracks in the foundation. The truth behind "I need you right now" is I am unwilling to face the void inside myself, and I need you to fill it so I don't have to. This is the test that reveals everything. It shows you, in the clearest possible terms, the cost of staying. It demonstrates that your role is not that of a partner, but of a permanent emotional custodian. Your contained silence forces this truth into the open. It's a brutal but necessary revelation. The relationship cannot evolve into something healthy until she develops her own capacity for self-containment. And that is work only she can do. Your job is not to manage her crises. It is to hold the space through your unshakable silence. For that realization to dawn on her, or for you to realize it's a dynamic you can no longer participate in. Now you have the data. You've witnessed the three tests: the projection of anger, the seduction of the reward, the desperation of the manufactured crisis. But what does this pattern actually mean about her? To understand that, we have to move from tactics to blueprints. We have to look at the underlying structure of human connection. Attachment theory. Her reaction to your silence is a perfect, unfiltered readout of her attachment style. Anxious attachment versus secure attachment. These are not just labels. They are entire operating systems for relationships. The anxiously attached individual has a nervous system that is calibrated for threat. They are like a seismograph tuned to detect the slightest tremor of abandonment. Their core belief is that connection is fragile and will be lost if not constantly monitored and maintained. The securely attached individual has a nervous system that assumes stability. They believe connection can withstand space, silence, and temporary disconnection. They have an internal baseline of safety that doesn't collapse the moment their partner turns inward. Your silence, your act of self-containment, forces her attachment blueprint to reveal itself. It's a stress test for her entire relational operating system. For the anxiously attached woman, your silence is not just quiet. It is a catastrophic data point. It confirms her deepest fear, that she is being abandoned. Her nervous system goes into red alert. This is why the tests follow a predictable escalation. First, the anger of protest, "fight for me." Then the reward of seduction, "see how good it can be." Then the crisis of despair, "I'm falling apart without you." Each one is a more desperate attempt to regulate the overwhelming anxiety triggered by your withdrawal. For the securely attached woman, your silence is interpreted completely differently. It might be noted. It might even be a topic of conversation later. But it does not trigger a systemic panic. She might think, "He's busy," or "he needs some space," or "we'll connect when the time is right." Her nervous system doesn't interpret your self-containment as a threat to her survival. She has the internal resources to sit with the uncertainty. She doesn't need to manufacture drama to force a reconnection because she trusts that the connection still exists, even in the quiet moments. Why does your silence reveal her attachment blueprint? Because attachment styles are fundamentally about regulation. An anxious attachment is a self-regulation deficit. The person lacks the internal capacity to calm their own nervous system when faced with relational ambiguity. So they need an external regulator. That's you. Your presence, your attention, your reactions are the calming agents for their emotions. When you withdraw these, when you become silent and focused on yourself, you remove their medication. Their withdrawal symptoms are the tests you see. Anger, reward, crisis, these are all symptoms of withdrawal. A secure attachment is a self-regulation success. The person can sit with discomfort. They can tolerate the void without needing to immediately fill it with someone else's energy. Your silence might be inconvenient, but it is not existentially threatening. It doesn't require a dramatic response because their sense of self is not tied to your constant validation. The data hidden in her reaction pattern is the truth about her capacity for an adult relationship. The 3 tests are not just random behaviors. They are the specific, predictable manifestations of an anxious attachment system under duress. The intensity, the duration, the creativity of the tests, all of it speaks to the depth of her insecurity. A mild anxious attachment might only deploy the anger test. A more entrenched one will go through the full escalation, from anger to reward to crisis. Your job is to stop seeing these as personal attacks and start seeing them as diagnostic readouts. You are not being manipulated by a person. You are witnessing the automatic firing of a threatened attachment system. This shift in perspective from "she is doing this to me" to "her psychology is reacting this way" is the foundation of true containment. It allows you to observe the data without getting enmeshed in the drama. You are no longer a player in her game. You are a scientist studying the mechanics of attachment, and what you learn will tell you everything you need to know about the possibility of a healthy future. But the conversation isn't happening in words. The real dialogue, the one that matters, is happening beneath consciousness. It's a conversation between 2 nervous systems. Your silence is not an absence of communication. It is a very specific, primal form of communication. It speaks directly to the autonomic nervous system, bypassing the rational mind and its stories. When you enact a true, self-contained silence, your physiology changes. Your heart rate stabilizes. Your breathing deepens. Your body enters a state of calm alertness. This is a biological signal. It transmits a message of stability and self-sufficiency. You are broadcasting on a frequency older than language that you are not in a state of threat or need. Your system is regulated. Her nervous system is listening. It is constantly scanning its environment for safety and danger cues. Your previous needy behavior, the constant contact, the seeking of validation, the frantic energy, was a danger cue to her system on a deep level. It signaled instability. It signaled that you were a source of volatility, not calm. Your contained silence is the opposite signal. It is a safety cue, or at least it should be. But for a nervous system that is itself dysregulated, a calm external signal can be misinterpreted as the most dangerous signal of all abandonment. This is the unconscious conversation. Your calmness meets her chaos. Your stability meets her instability. The clash is not intellectual. It is biological. Her anger, her rewards, her crises, these are the verbal translations of her nervous system's panic. It's screaming, "Regulate me. You were my regulator, and you've stopped. The words she uses are just the captions for a physiological event. "You're playing games" is the subtitle for my fight or flight system has been activated by your calmness, I miss you so much is the subtitle for my attachment system is in withdrawal from the dopamine you used to provide. This is why words lie, but physiology doesn't. A person can say, "I'm fine," while their voice is trembling, their breathing is shallow, and their body is rigid with tension. The body cannot fake the state of the nervous system. Your ability to read this is crucial. You must learn to listen to the music, not just the lyrics. The content of her message is the lyric. The tone, the timing, the emotional charge, that's the music. Is the music one of genuine, centered emotion? Or is it the frantic, jagged music of a system in distress? The anger that comes from a place of solid boundaries has a different sound than the anger that comes from attachment panic. One is a sharp, clean line. The other is a messy, desperate explosion. The truth is in the heart rate, the stress, the tension. When you receive a message, before you even process the words, check your own body. Does your gut clench? Does your chest tighten? That is your nervous system picking up the dissonance in hers. That is the data. Her words might say, "I love you," but if your body feels a knot in your stomach, the truth is in the knot. Your own regulated state becomes the tuning fork against which you can measure the frequency of her communication. A secure, self-contained signal will feel clean and resonant in your body. A dysregulated, manipulative signal will feel discordant and unsettling. This unconscious conversation is the ultimate test of your containment. Can you stay in your own calm, regulated state while being bombarded with signals of chaos? This is the practice. It's not about ignoring her. It's about not letting her dysregulation become your dysregulation. It's about holding your center so firmly that you can observe the storm without needing to either run into it or stop it. You become the silent, stable eye of the hurricane, and in that space, the real transformation happens. Not because you said the right thing, but because your nervous system communicated the only thing that truly matters. I am here. I am calm. I am complete. And that is a statement that changes everything. So what are you actually measuring with these 3 tests? You're measuring a single, critical deficit, the capacity for self-regulation. This is the foundational skill of emotional adulthood. It's the ability to sit with discomfort, to process anxiety internally, to navigate the void without requiring an external person to do the work for you. Her reaction to your silence is a direct readout of this capacity, or more accurately, the lack of it. What does her reaction say about her inner resources? The anger test reveals she cannot tolerate the frustration of not getting an immediate response. The reward test reveals she believes connection is a tool to be deployed for control. The crisis test reveals she cannot face internal emptiness without creating external chaos. Each test is a failure of self-regulation. Each one demonstrates an inability to metabolize her own emotional experience. She is outsourcing her stability to you. Your silence is the moment you stop accepting the delivery, and her factory of dysregulation goes into overdrive, trying to force the package back into your hands. The capacity to sit with discomfort is the dividing line between psychological childhood and adulthood. A child cannot self-soothe. When a child is upset, it needs a parent to regulate its nervous system through touch, through voice, through presence. An adult has, ideally, internalized that capacity. They can feel anxiety and breathe through it. They can feel sadness without needing someone to immediately make it better. They can feel anger without needing to project it onto someone else. Your silent containment forces this truth into the open. It asks a simple, brutal question. Is she an adult who can regulate herself, or is she still a child in an adult's body, looking for a parent in a partner? Why can most people not tolerate silence? Because silence is the void. It's the space where you are alone with yourself. For someone with a self-regulation deficit, that space is terrifying. It's filled with unprocessed emotions, unresolved trauma, and a fundamental sense of inadequacy. The noise of a relationship, the fights, the makeups, the dramas, a distraction from that void. It's a way to avoid the internal work. Your silence removes the distraction. It holds up a mirror and forces her to look at what she's been running from. Her attempts to break your silence are not about you. They are desperate attempts to shatter the mirror. The developmental roots of this regulation capacity run deep. It's built in childhood through consistent, attuned parenting. When a child's emotional states are met with calm, understanding responses, the child learns that emotions are manageable. They learn to build an internal thermostat. When a child's emotions are ignored, punished, or met with the parent's own anxiety, the child never learns this skill. They enter adulthood with a broken thermostat, forever seeking external sources to heat them up or cool them down. Your partner's reaction is not a choice she is making in the moment. It is the automatic firing of a nervous system that never learned how to silence. She is not trying to manipulate you. She is trying to survive an internal storm with no shelter. How does silence expose emotional maturity? A mature individual sees silence as space, as an opportunity for reflection, as a natural rhythm in a relationship. An immature individual sees silence as a weapon, as a punishment, as a threat to their very existence. The mature response is curiosity or patience. The immature response is panic and escalation. Your act of containment is the ultimate litmus test. It doesn't just show you who she is. It shows you who she has had to be to survive her own psychology up until this point. And that revelation is the necessary first step toward any real change, either within the relationship or within yourself, as you realize the cost of staying with someone who cannot sit alone in a quiet room. So how do you build this? How do you move from frantic neediness to genuine self-containment? It's a daily practice of nervous system regulation. You must build tolerance for relational silence by moving your focus from external validation to internal stability. This is the transformation from being externally focused to internally complete. It's not a tactic. It's a fundamental rewiring of your being. Now you have the raw data. You've seen the 3 tests play out. But raw data is useless without a framework to interpret it. You need to turn this from a confusing series of events into a clear diagnostic tool. This is about developing psychological pattern recognition. Most men misread these signals because they're looking at the content, the angry words, the loving words, the dramatic story. They get lost in the plot. The art of seeing what's really happening is to ignore the plot and study the structure. Creating your own relational diagnostic tool starts with a shift in perspective. You are no longer a participant in the drama. You are an observer of a psychological system. Your job is to track patterns, not to react to stimuli. When she sends an angry text, you don't ask, "Why is she mad at me?" You ask, "What stage of the test is this?" Is this the initial protest of the anger test? When she follows it with sudden warmth, you don't ask, "Does this mean she's sorry?" You ask, "Is this the reward test being deployed because the anger failed?" You are looking for the sequence, the escalation, the timing. How to read the 3 tests accurately requires you to hold 3 questions in your mind at all times. First, what is the trigger? Your silent containment is the Second, what is the response? Anger, reward, or crisis? Third, what is the intended effect? To provoke a reaction, to seduce you back, to force a rescue. When you filter every interaction through these 3 questions, the manipulation becomes transparent. It loses its power. You stop seeing a personal attack and start seeing a predictable psychological algorithm. Why do most men misread the signals? Because they are emotionally they take it personally. They feel the guilt, the obligation, the desire. Their own unmet needs get tangled up in her tests. The diagnostic framework requires emotional detachment. It requires you to see her behavior as a symptom of her attachment system, not a commentary on your worth. This is the hardest part. Your own longing for connection will try to misinterpret the data. It will whisper that this time the reward is genuine, that this crisis is real. The framework is your anchor against that self-deception. Developing this pattern recognition is a skill. It takes practice. You will get it wrong at first. You will break your containment and engage. But each time you do, you learn. You add that data point to your framework. You see that engaging with the anger leads to more anger. Engaging with the reward resets the cycle. Engaging with the crisis entrenches the dependency. Over time, you build an internal database of cause and effect. You learn to predict the next move, and in that prediction lies your power. Not power over her, but power over your own reactions. The power to choose not to play a game whose rules are designed for you to lose. The ultimate goal of this framework is to answer one question. Is this a relationship between 2 adults, or is it a system where one adult is regulating the other? The tests provide the answer. If your silence is met with respect, with space, or with calm inquiry, you have your answer. If it is met with the predictable escalation of anger, reward, and crisis, you have a different, equally clear answer. The diagnostic framework removes the guesswork. It replaces hope with data. And with that data, you can make a conscious choice about what you are willing to participate in. This is where the real work begins. The diagnostic framework gives you the data, but the data is useless if it doesn't lead to transformation. That transformation is called individuation. It's the psychological process of separating from the fused identity of a relationship and becoming a distinct, self-contained individual. Your silence is not a tactic to win her back. It is the very engine of this separation. It is the necessary space in which you stop being we and remember how to be I. How does silence accelerate this psychological separation? Fusion is maintained by noise, by constant conversation, by shared emotional states, by the enmeshment of 2 nervous systems. Your silence creates a vacuum. It pulls apart the sticky threads of codependency. In that quiet, you are forced to confront who you are without her reactions, without her validation, without her drama to define your emotional landscape. It's uncomfortable because you're meeting a stranger, yourself. The journey from fusion to individuality is a journey of reclamation. You are taking back the parts of yourself you outsourced to the relationship. Your sense of security, your sense of worth, your ability to feel calm, these cannot live in someone else's hands. Your contained silence is the act of calling them home. Why is withdrawal necessary for growth? Because growth requires internal conflict. It requires you to wrestle with your own demons, your own insecurities, your own void. In a fused relationship, that conflict is always externalized. It becomes a fight with your partner. It becomes a problem you try to solve out there. Your silence forces the conflict inward where it belongs. The anger you feel isn't about her anymore. It's about your own powerlessness. The anxiety isn't about losing her. It's about facing your own emptiness. This is the only conflict that leads to growth. You cannot resolve an internal problem with an external solution. The cost of avoiding relational silence is a life of half-existence. It's the cost of never knowing who you truly are because you are always defined by your role in someone else's story. You are the boyfriend, the husband, the rescuer, the villain, but you are not the man. Avoiding the silence means choosing the comfort of fusion over the terror and the triumph of individuality. It means staying a child in a relational nursery where your needs are met but your potential is stunted. The silence is the doorway out of that nursery. Walking through it is the first act of true adulthood. How does containment build true masculinity? Conventional masculinity is often about external power control, dominance, provision, but that is a hollow strength. It's a strength that collapses the moment the external source of validation is removed. True masculinity is internal. It is the strength to stand alone. It is the power to contain your own energy, your own emotions, your own destiny, without requiring an audience. Your silence, when it comes from containment, is not passive. It is an active, powerful stance. It is the declaration that you are the source of your own stability. You are the anchor in your own storm. This is the foundation of a masculinity that cannot be shaken by a partner's moods, by a relationship's status, or by the world's approval. It is a strength that is earned in the quiet, alone, and it is the only strength that lasts. But here is where most men failed the test. They go through the motions of silence, but they secretly track the days. They count the hours since the last text. They monitor her social media for signs of distress or moving on. This is the needy man's silence in disguise. It's a performance of containment that is utterly focused on the outcome. The moment you start tracking, you have already lost. You have shifted from an internal process to an external waiting game. The shift from outcome to process is the entire point. If your goal is to get her to react in a certain way to miss you, to come back, to apologize, then your silence is a manipulation. It is a covert contract. I will endure this discomfort in exchange for that reward. True containment has no outcome. Its only goal is the process itself, to build your capacity to be with yourself, to honor the void without immediately trying to fill it with hope, with strategy, or with her eventual return. The discipline is to keep your focus on your own nervous system, on your own breath, on the simple fact that you are okay in this moment, alone. How do you honor the void without filling it? You stop fighting the emptiness. You stop seeing it as a problem to be solved. You sit with the discomfort of not knowing. You allow the anxiety to be there without acting on it. You observe the urge to check your phone, to break the silence, to manufacture a reason to reach out, and you let the urge pass without obeying it. This is the practice. It's not grand or dramatic. It's the minute-to-minute discipline of choosing your own containment over the temporary relief of re-engagement. You honor the void by trusting that it is not a sign of failure, but a necessary stage of rebirth. Why is this work never about her? Because she is just the mirror. Her reactions are simply reflecting back to you the state of your own attachment system. If her anger triggers you, it's because you have a wound around conflict. If her reward seduces you, it's because you have a wound around validation. If her crisis hooks you, it's because you have a wound around being needed. The work was always yours. The silence is just the tool that forces you to see it. The final accountability is this: you are responsible for your own reactions. You are responsible for your own containment. You are responsible for choosing growth over comfort, even when every fiber of your being screams to go back to the familiar dysfunction. She is not the problem. She is the symptom, and your silence is the medicine. So this is the ultimate purpose. Contained silence isn't a relationship hack. It's a radical redefinition of masculine strength. It's the understanding that power isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. The final truth about relational power is that it has nothing to do with the other person. It resides entirely in your ability to remain centered in your own value, regardless of who is or isn't in your life. Your next step in psychological development is to make this practice permanent. It's not something you turn on and off. It becomes the way you move through the world. The challenge of becoming unshakable is the daily choice to prioritize your internal state over external drama. It's the commitment to yourself that you will no longer outsource your peace. The work is never done, but the path is clear. Stop trying to win. Start learning to be.